Nobody talks about what came after. Everyone imagines Roman soldiers as invincible heroes. Shining armor, victorious shouts echoing through the mountains, banners fluttering like eternal symbols of glory. But that's just the postcard. The pretty face, the one Rome wanted you to see, the truth, the unfiltered truth, begins the moment the fighting ends, when the dust settles, when the smell of blood mixes with sweat, iron, wet earth, and fear. When the silence weighs heavier than the screams, and the air grows thick, almost suffocating, that's when the real cruelty begins. Surviving, broken, inside and out. Picture a battlefield after the slaughter. Mud up to the ankles. Pools stained red. Severed limbs scattered like dead branches. Men groaning, others screaming, some completely silent. Eyes open, staring, but empty, and in the middle, a legionary flat on his back, his armor torn, leg shattered, a gaping wound in his side spilling thick, hot blood mixed with dirt. The mud seeps into the wound with every twitch. He tries to move, but every attempt rips a scream from his throat. He knows he can't stay there, but he also can't move. His world shrinks to a few inches. The sky, a circling crow, and his own blood soaking the ground. Then hears footsteps, not enemies. His own. But they're not coming to help. They're coming to choose. Centurions and auxiliaries scan the bodies quickly. A glance, a judgment, is he useful or not? If the wounded man can stand, if he answers clearly, if he can still hold a sword, maybe. Just maybe. They take him. If not, he's forgotten, sometimes ignored. No goodbyes. Those deemed recoverable were taken to the medical tents. But don't imagine anything like a hospital. They were dark, stinking tents, filled with screams, the stench of burned flesh, and stale vinegar. The tools were minimal. Saws, shears, knives, thick needles like nails. The Medice's hands didn't tremble out of fear. But exhaustion? They'd been cutting, sewing, draining pus, and cauterizing for hours. Sometimes days. Most weren't trained doctors. They were slaves or soldiers with a bit of experience. Some did what they could. Others did what they were told. The wounded legionary was thrown onto a table. If lucky, he was tied down. If not, 4 men held him while another plunged the blade. Amputations were fast. Not always out of medical necessity, but because of time. If the wound looked complicated, they cut it off, literally. No anesthesia, just a rag to bite or a whispered prayer. Fire was the end. A glowing hot iron pressed into raw flesh. The smell was unbearable. A mix of blood, sweat, burnt skin and fear. Many screamed until their voices broke. Some died mid-procedure. Others survived, and wished they hadn't. Those who didn't make it to the tent were left outside, in the cold. Under the rain, shivering eyes glazed, waiting for someone, anyone, to see them. A helmet, a dagger, a boot. Anything was useful, even if you were still breathing, even if your eyes still pleaded. Those who survived the first day entered an even worse phase. Waiting in agony, days spent lying on dirty cloths, raw, watching maggots settle into their wounds. Pus oozed slowly, thickly. The stench was unbearable. Some bodies swelled, others turned black. Infection didn't forgive. Often, they didn't know what would kill them. Wound, fever, or abandonment. The bandages stuck to their flesh, removing them ripped skin off. The pain never stopped. No breaks, no relief. The heat of the day made them sweat into their wounds. The night's cold sank into their bones. They trembled, delirious, begging for a death that wouldn't come. Some muttered the names of their mothers, their children, gods they hadn't spoken to in years. The tents were hell, flies everywhere, excrement just steps away. Endless screams, no one slept. The stronger ones stuffed rags in their ears to avoid hearing the man next to them slowly fade, because that's what they did, fade. They didn't die with glory. They didn't fall in battle. They died coughing, choking, gasping like wounded animals. Alone, nameless, the Medici often didn't even look at them. There was no time, no supplies, no interest. They were given vinegar, some water, and if lucky, opium. But most of the time, not even that, they were left there, among screams and flies. And if they made too much noise, a comrade would squeeze their neck until they fell silent. Few survived that ordeal, and those who did not return the same. Some lost an eye, others an arm, but what they all lost was something inside. Their spark, their humanity, their soul. Many of those who managed to survive the physical pain did not emerge mentally intact. The trauma was not just a shadow. It was a constant presence. There were legionaries who, even days later, continued to hear screams even though there was no one around them. Others woke up suddenly, sweating, convinced that they were still in the mud, surrounded by corpses. Insomnia was common. Sleeping was dangerous, because dreams were not restful. They were memories, the sound of flesh being torn apart, the heat of molten iron on skin, the eyeless face of a comrade who begged for help and received none. Many chose to stay awake, hours, days. Some pulled out their own hair. Others clawed at their arms. Some fled the camp. No direction, they just wanted to get away from where they died inside. Food had no taste. Wine brought no comfort. The body lived, but the soul didn't. Some stared at nothing for hours. They were called hollow men. They didn't speak, didn't laugh, didn't react, not because they didn't want to, because they couldn't. Inside, there was only an echo, and then there were those who were sent back to fight. The system dragged them to the front again. A sword was put back in their shaking hands. A helmet fastened over dead eyes. They were used as shields, as examples, as reminders that Rome waited for no one. You fulfilled your duty, or you died, or both. And if you were one of the lucky ones who survived, they sent you back to the front, even if you were still bleeding, even if you couldn't sleep, even if your soul was screaming. Because Rome didn't ask, Rome ordered. And you obeyed. Or you died, period. Some returned to battle before their wounds had healed. Open gashes hidden beneath filthy bandages. Fevers numbed with cheap wine. Fear disguised by empty stares. And when they fell again, it wasn't an accident. It was a cycle. A continuous sacrifice no one questioned. Because Rome didn't stop for the broken. And finally, those who survived years of war returned home, only to face another battle. Being forgotten, they came back unrecognizable, mutilated bodies, burned faces, shattered souls. Some children didn't recognize them. Some wives no longer waited. Some neighbors avoided their eyes. Rome celebrated victories, not scars. Decorated champions were given parades. Wounded survivors? Silence. There were no medals for those missing a leg, no speeches for those who couldn't sleep without crying. They returned to a city that had moved on without them. Many ended up begging, others drowned in wine. Some tried to tell their stories, but no one wanted to listen. Glory was beautiful. As long as it didn't stain, the empire ran on blood, but didn't want to see it. And there, in the corner of a tavern, sitting alone, a former legionary wondered if it had all been worth it, if his pain, his broken body, his shattered soul, had meant anything, if Rome, eternal Rome, would ever remember his name, the answer was no. And that, too, is history. If you made it this far, comment the word echo, because that's what many of them left behind. A distant echo, a story fading among the whispers of the past. Thank you for listening to what others choose to silence, because here, we don't romanticize the past. We strip it bare. Subscribe if you want to uncover the darkest truths the empires tried to bury. What's coming next? We'll leave you speechless. Here, at Empires Uncovered.